I'll let you know. I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Cost?
Here.
Mrs. Floyd? Here. Mr. Frazier?
Present.
Ms. Hall? Here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Murmy?
Present.
Mr. Rapp?
Here.
And Mr. Letta?
Here. All right, thank you, Autumn. If you please rise and join us in the invocation. Mr. Johnson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, we come into your presence as your humble servant. We are thankful to be for the beautiful days that we've had. We are thankful to live in a country where we have open and free elections that all can participate in. Be with those who succeed, lead them and guide them, and bring us together as a nation. Bless those in need. Bless those in joy. Bless those who experience sorrow. Give them strength. Be with us in our deliberations, and may we know your will. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. A little disappointed there wasn't anything about the Cubs. Mr. Johnson, Heavenly Father.
I was grateful, but I didn't blame it on God.
Well, we appreciate that. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything that may be pertinent to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything? Mr. Marmee?
Yes, I'd like to excuse Mr. Bub.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd to excuse Mr. Bubb. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Next, we have the minutes of our October 17, 2016 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Raz, second by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have 5 reports this evening of standing committees, one from Finance, Street, Service, Economic Development, and Personnel. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Also on reports from city officials, we have 2 this evening, one from our auditor, Stephen Johnson, the operating report for the period ending October 31st, 2016, and one from Barb Jobs, our city tax administrator, the income tax revenues for the period ending October 15th and October 31st, 2016. Without objection, those also will receive and filed. Under communications this evening, we have 3. One by Roger Loomis, our utilities superintendent, liens in the amount of $22,787.39 for past due water, sewer, and stormwater bills. The Ohio Division of Liquor Control, an application for a new liquor license for Moe's Original Barbecue at 21 West Church Street. And the last one, we have a presentation this evening by Julia Applegate, Director of the Institute for Health and Equity. Julia, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you. Is here the good spot?
That's perfect.
Okay. I've discovered that there's a problem with this award, so I'm just going to place it there so it doesn't roll away and become more dramatic than it should be. So thank you all for having me here tonight. I work with Equitas Health in Columbus, Ohio, but we're a statewide organization that provides HIV care and treatment, HIV prevention services, and primary care services for the LGBTQ community around Ohio. We had a conference in October, at which time we had an awards ceremony, and your Councilman Jeremy Blake was nominated for an award and won an award. So I just wanted to share some information about it and present that award.
Mr. Blake, you want to go on down? Oh.
Okay.
Sponsors this.
Scoot in deep.
Okay. Okay, so the Transforming Care Award recognizes the contributions of individuals making a difference in the area of LGBTQ and HIV/AIDS health and wellness. And we had over 52 nominations from all around the state of Ohio in several different categories. And Mr. Blake was awarded the Community Advocate Award. So this award recognizes any community advocate who passionately supports issues that are important to the LGBTQ or HIV/AIDS community. This award goes to Jeremy Blake from Newark, Ohio. Jeremy was nominated by Drake and Munson. In his nomination, Mr. Munson said, Jeremy wrote and helped pass an LGBTQ anti-discrimination law for the city of Newark. In his nomination submission, Draken said, "Because of this action, I, my fiance, and countless others feel safer looking for and keeping jobs in this community and simply walking through our great city." I'll share this award with you. So there's your certificate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is the actual physical award.
We'll just set that.
Well, like I said, it rolled right off, so I'd be happy to take that back and get it fixed and put it in the mail to you.
Whatever you think's appropriate, so.
Well, I hate to give it to you and take it away, but I also don't want to give you an award that might...
Well, how about we get a... Mark, can you get a picture? How about we get
Yeah,
a
that'd be
picture?
great. And then I'll certainly send it back to you, but it rolled
Let's
right
go
off,
from
so...
Picture's not selfie. Great smiles. There you go. One more. Good measure. Just in case I screwed up two, we'll take a third one.
Thank you.
Way to go, Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you did, and for your city council for passing laws that help our community.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
I will send this back down.
Well, I just, even though this award was given to me, it's these people here, because this legislation came out unanimously. Doug Sasson had worked with us to draft the legislation. Councilman Roletta was a big supporter. We went to some meetings over in Columbus with Equality Ohio to draft the legislation, get more information. But ultimately, it was a unanimous decision by this council that approved that legislation and made equality and diversity an important issue in our community. So my name might be on it, but it's everyone in this room who had a part in it. So this goes to everybody. Thank you so much.
Mention that, so once a month it'll just kind of rotate around everybody's house.
Maybe I shouldn't fix it then.
Good idea. Next on the agenda this evening, we have comments from citizens. That's the time for us to hear from you. This is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I will recognize you. Mr. Butcher, you can go first.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was late. My name is William Butcher, 263 Union Street. I just came here tonight. There's one thing that's on my mind, some of the potholes in these streets. I like to see them patched. I know the Union Street looks really nice, but I can't hardly wait till the new interchange will be opening over the freeway. And there's one comment I like to know when the city of Newark is going to get there's a street the potholes in the streets patched up. I know when it's coming real soon. And I just don't know. I've been getting complaints from motorists. They like to know when the potholes are going to be patched in the middle of the streets. And yes, I'm having fun at the Kiwanis. I'm one of the board of directors, and I'm following the one next year will be president of Action Council, and I'm following your footsteps, Mr. Alton. So that passed.
Thank you, William. Anyone else for this first section of citizens' comments? Mike?
If I may pass.
Sure. You just want to give it to Dee, and she'll pass them on down. Just give us your name and address for the record. I forgot to say that. Sorry.
Make sure I'm in mind. There you go. Thank you. City Council members, citizens of Newark, Ohio.
If you just give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Michael Blowers. I reside at 830 East Village Drive, Newark, Ohio.
Thank you.
I stand before you tonight representing myself as a citizen of this community who also serves as a board member of the Newark City School District. The comments I make tonight and my opinions I share with you tonight are mine and mine alone. They do not represent or reflect the thoughts and opinions of other school district board members. I'm not here as a representative of the Newark City School Board. All information that I share with you tonight is now a matter of public record as it was discussed during open public meetings. As we all know, the City of Newark administration contacted and approached the Newark City School Board of Education to consider tax increment financing, which would divert tax revenue from the school district to the City of Newark.
And these funds would be allocated to build a road to connect Baker Boulevard and Evans Boulevard. As a board member, I had to work with fluctuating inconsistent numbers and other considerations such as the legal definition of tax increment financing and the ethical application of the TIF mechanism and local politics. My main concern as a member of the board has been with the ethical and political issues as the city administration came to meetings not totally prepared and had not presented evidence-based research, such as an official safety study in support of their claim that this road would increase emergency response time to the schools, nor a blueprint plan of how the road would look with safety concerns addressed. Safety is important. Tax increment financing, known as TIF, is a mechanism provided by the state of Ohio to local municipalities to tap into future tax revenue to build and to improve infrastructure for the purpose of economic growth. This future tax revenue would have otherwise been shared by the local public school district, vocational school, public library, and other government entities will lose this future tax revenue if it is diverted to the city for 10, 20, or 30 years. The Newark City School Board, in a unanimous vote, rejected the Kroger TIF request for the reason of losing needed operating revenue. And simply put, the school district would lose a classroom teacher. Which class, subject, or position would you recommend the school board eliminates? Regardless of how much the city administration spins the idea that the school district will benefit, the bottom line is this: the children will lose. If the Kroger TIF proposal is passed by City Council, the Newark City School District will lose future commercial tax revenue, which could result in more taxes for the citizens of Newark to make up the difference. The Newark City School District Administration and Board of Education has been vigilant and diligent with the taxpayers' money. It is my responsibility as a duly elected official of the Newark City School District to protect the interest of Newark City schools. That's why I'm here tonight, which includes but not limited to providing for our children the facilities, the classroom teachers, and the materials needed to learn and to prepare them for their futures and the future of our community, state, and country. It is my personal position that tax increment financing is a good tool if it is used correctly. However, it is the primary responsibility of the city, state, and federal governments to first raise revenue through the consent of the citizen to build and maintain infrastructure which sustains the viability of the economy and a means in which to safeguard its citizens. Consider 5 different points: safety, tax increment finance, economic growth, the timing of this request, and the urgency. Safety. That is our first priority. It's my first priority as a board member. But there was no safety study. Tax increment finance. The formula in which a municipality may take money from other government groups, take money from the city schools, and that's what that chart is I gave you. That's actually from the county auditor, Mike Smith. And if you look at that, I marked on this the loss to the school if it had been passed. The way it was would have been a teacher's salary and benefits, $52,000. Regardless of how much, it's still money taken from the school district, which I'm in the business of helping the schools teach. We're not building roads. That's not our job. Economic growth. Economic growth was another consideration. It would take an awful lot of jobs to make up the difference with income tax, from income tax. What kind of jobs would we be growing? I mean, you put that road in there, what kind of economic growth is there going to be? I mean, there was no real hard facts for that. And the timing. How long has Meyer been out of that place? And why all of a sudden we need this road built? TIF has been around for a while. It could have been worked out. And the urgency piece goes with that. I believe that TIF, tax increment financing, can be a good tool. This is not the project to use it. Thornwood would be a much better time spent on Thornwood to develop economic growth. And I asked at the last board meeting, did the city administration pursue other means of revenue? Like going to the taxpayer and asking for a road levy. The answer I heard was, we have grants. And if you approve this tonight, there's still no plan. There's money coming out of the school district and there's no plan. And what else, that I heard of. I haven't heard anything. So, those are my thoughts and my concerns. I also have a concern with the way the ordinance reads tonight. 1643. Where it says authorizing agreements with the respective property owners. I'm on the fourth sentence down. Authorizing agreements with the respective property owners affected by such public infrastructure improvement and with the Newark City School District. Well, we have not agreed to anything. And the Career and the CTEC, they have nothing in this. So that's kind of misleading. And then, of course, the urgency of declaring an emergency tonight. I understand the timing. I hope you say no. I think there's a better way without taking money from our school district and future revenue from the school district. So I thank you for your time. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 1643 was written assuming Newark City Schools were going to go ahead and be in favor of this, so that's why it is still this way and we've already passed it before they made their vote, correct?
Well, it hasn't been passed yet. It was
Right,
drafted.
before they made their vote against the school board.
Passed out of committee.
Passed out of committee,
Yeah.
correct.
Yes. Thank you. Also, there is a ballot on the paving ballot on the ballot tomorrow. There's a paving levy on the ballot tomorrow, so we appreciate a vote for yes. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? There is one other section after the legislations. Let's move on to committees, or ordinances on the second reading. I'll get this here in a minute. 16-40.
Ordinance 16-41 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson, an ordinance accepting the dedication to public use of the streets in Park Ridge subdivision, Phase 2, Section 1A and Section 2, and setting the development surety for said additions.
You've heard the second reading of 16-41. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 16-41.
Motion by Mr. Rath.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 16-41?
Just happy to see some more growth in the residential section of the most desired ward in all of Newark to live in.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Anyone else like to?
We're not going to touch that.
Okay, Autumn, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
And Mr. Roletta?
Yes. 16-41 passes 9-0. Next, we go to ordinances on the first reading, 16-42.
Ordinance 16-42 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Rath, an ordinance vacating portions of alleys as shown on the plat of Charles Miller's addition as recorded in Plat Book 2, page 129 of the Licking County Plat Records. Said alleys are located between 226 and 232 East Main Street.
16-42 will be held for a second reading for 2 weeks. Next on the first reading, we have 16-43.
Ordinance 16-43 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, and Mr. Johnson, an ordinance declaring certain improvements to parcels of real property in the city of Newark which are necessary for the further development of the Baker Evans project to be for a public purpose, describing the public infrastructure improvements to be made to directly benefit the respective parcels, authorizing agreements with the respective property owners affected by such public infrastructure improvements and with the Newark City School District and the Career and Technology Education Center of Licking County, establishing the Baker Evans Tax Increment Equivalent Fund and declaring an emergency.
This is on the first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Blake?
Move to adopt 1643.
Second. Motion by Mr. Blake, second by Mr. Frazier.
Mr. President.
Mr. Blake?
Mr. President, as we all became aware of the actions of the Newark City School Board last week, Director Motter had called me earlier today and I'll offer a motion to table this legislation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Blake to table, second by Mrs. Floyd. There is no discussion on motion to table. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
And Mr. Roletta?
Yes. 1643 will be tabled, 9-0. Next, we have 16-44.
Ordinance 16-44 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, and Mr. Johnson, an ordinance amending the position, classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the Licking County Municipal Clerk of Courts by changing the number of deputy clerks full-time and setting compensation therefore.
16-44 will be held for a second reading for 2 weeks. Next, we have 16-45.
Ordinance 16-45 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, an ordinance waiving the statutory residency requirement for the Director of Public Safety and approving maintenance of a residence outside the city limits of Newark, Ohio.
16-45 will be held for 2 weeks. And that concludes the first readings. Now we have resolutions on the first reading. 16-90.
Resolution 16-90 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
16, Mr. Marmee.
Mr. President, make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on Resolution 16-90.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Marmee.
Yes, we have some payouts, and we also have to make sure that we have money in some funds that near the end of the year, so we have to move some money around for that.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Autumn, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes. 2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-90.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any other discussion on 16-90? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
And Mr. Roletta?
Yes. 16-90 passes 9-0. Next on the first reading, we have 16-91.
Resolution 16-91 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
16-91 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next, we have 16-92.
Resolution 16-92 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson, an ODOT preliminary legislation for bridge inspection program services included but not limited to bridge load rating calculations, score assessments, bridge inspections, and fracture critical plan development and declaring an emergency.
16-92 is on the first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-92.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 16-92?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
this was given the emergency clause at the request of ODOT to meet deadlines.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub? Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
And Mr. Roletta?
Yes. 16-92 passes 9-0. Next on the first reading, we have 16-93.
Resolution 16-93 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Koss, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, a resolution supporting the Ohio Department of Transportation for the designation of state and U.S. bicycle routes crossing Ohio, including U.S. Bike Route 50 and State Bike Route 65 in the city of Newark.
16-93 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. And next we have, finally, 16-94.
Resolution 16-94 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Koss, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Johnson, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and enter into contract for certain essential supplies for various departments of the City of Newark, Ohio for 2017.
16-94 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading, and that concludes our legislation this evening. Thank you for your attention. Next on the agenda, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Same rules apply. Do we have anyone? Mr. Butcher?
Butcher, 263 Union Street. I'd like to know when the street paving is going to begin. I voted for the tax levy, and I did vote for the street maintenance levy. And I just let Newark City Council know that this past few weeks, this past Friday, down here, I did pay my city taxes. That passed.
Thank you, Wayne. We appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Mr. Crowder?
Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. Haven't spoken in a while, just felt the need to do so on the eve of Election Day. First and foremost, as the founding member of the 99% of North and East Central Ohio, I want to remind everyone about the Democracy Day initiative on the ballot tomorrow, and pretty sure most of everyone here has voted already, so I'm just hopeful and cautiously optimistic that it's going to pass. But with that said, I'll move to a non-local issue. Regarding our presidential election. I mean, I'm typically someone who's very obsessed with presidential campaigns, but this year I've been especially disturbed. Never before have I had to worry about my kids being anywhere near a television when, a campaign has been going on, and I think as Americans we should be especially ashamed of this year. And I'm very much looking forward to the end of election night. But what I'm concerned about is what happens after. Because although I have my strong opinion as to what's going to happen, I'm afraid that we've reached such a boiling point that we're at a very dangerous period right now, I think, especially when you hear some of the rhetoric on television. It's such a contrast from last year here in our local election. I mean, the 6 of us who ran for council at large, I think we overwhelmingly conducted ourselves in a respectful, civil manner. And there's a lot to be learned from that on a national level, state level even. And when I hear a candidate for president, first of all using rhetoric or even countenancing rhetoric that says throw the other opponent in prison, promising that if they were president they would do so, and then people cheering that, as Americans we should really be disturbed by that. No matter who you support, it's very troubling to hear that one person is almost promising that they would do that to the other candidate. By definition, anyone who knows anything about political science knows that's a banana republic. And, it's very troubling in that. So if we really care about our form of democracy, which I know it's not pure, it's a republic, but if we care about it and our freedoms, if you care about the right to dissent, then you should wholeheartedly condemn such rhetoric. You hear that same candidate also saying to their supporters, we can't let them steal this election from us. I literally heard that from a campaign speech on television. I mean, that's not something taken out of context. That's literally something to where the wrong person hears it. I mean, we already have claims that this election is being rigged, but on the other hand, when you're saying, can't let this steal them from us, I mean, you're setting the groundwork for an election not being accepted as legitimate, the election result. So I'm hoping that no matter who loses, that they concede and that we move as a nation to unite. I mean, you don't have to support that president, but you have to acknowledge that they are our president, period. And have to accept the results up and down the ballot. But it's time to move beyond this hyper-partisanship. And although I'm very much a partisan myself, I also respect the right of another person to disagree with me. And for the sake of our children, I think this horrible campaign needs to be forgotten, pushed away in the past, at least left behind in the dustbin of history. So vote tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Anyone else? Anyone from the City of United City Administration like to speak? Mr. Motter?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to maybe respond to a couple of things that were shared by Mr. Blowers a little while ago. The first issue that he cited was safety study. When we met with the individual city school board members, both one-on-one and also as a group, we did know that there was a safety concern. They shared it with us at the school board meeting, and we immediately said we want representatives from these school boards at the table when the preparation for these roads was going to be done. We knew that was going to be very, very important. So we did address that. Did we have a safety study done? No. Why? Well, I guess Kroger's intent, when that was known, it was pretty well, I think, on the drawing board when they began moving forward. We didn't have a whole lot of advance notice in order to try to do things like put safety studies together and maybe traffic studies and some other things. But again, we were very cognizant, and we did immediately reach out and said we want members of the school boards to be working with the city and to address any safety concerns that they may have. The second item, the TIF itself, and the money it's going to generate or not generate. It was mentioned that there'd be a loss of $52,000, and I think it's also important with that loss, while that is a net loss as a result of the TIF, there was also a net gain to the Newark City schools. They were going to continue receiving the same amount they were when Myers was in operations, and they were also going to receive an additional funding from the 25% compensation agreement that the TIF offered. Economic growth, Mr. Blowers mentioned there's no facts of how many jobs will be created and so forth, and he's right. It's something that's very difficult to quantify when you're talking economic development projects. It's kind of like marketing. If any of you have ever done advertising or marketing to promote a business or an event, it's very difficult to quantify what the results of that advertising are. Same way with this TIF. The urgency factor, I don't know if there's a fact that because we're here in November trying to get this TIF approved and we have to have it done by the end of the year, I guess how I'd respond to that is as soon as we knew that Kroger's was going to proceed and there was an opportunity here, we immediately met with members of the school board. Myself, David Rhodes, at the time Stuart Moynihan, who was our economic development coordinator, the three of us met with Jeff Anderson, Newark School Board Treasurer, Dave Alda-Peter. I'm trying to remember David's title, but I believe he was in charge of operations. Mayor, does that sound about right for Newark City Schools? And also a gentleman named Jason Keys, and we'd also invited Superintendent Doug Ute to attend that meeting 18 months ago approximately to have discussion that we would like to consider doing a TIF. So we did, as soon as we heard, we began really putting the wheels into motion on this. Did the city pursue other funding means? Again, because of the timing of all this, there hasn't been a lot of opportunity. Any of you have been around long enough and you've seen Brian Moorhead operate and the amount of time it takes for him to get grants, applications in, get on the list with ODOT and so forth. It's quite a process. We didn't have that kind of time in order to do that. However, we did make a commitment that we would certainly pursue grants. We would also perhaps have capital improvement dollars that we might be able to appropriate. perhaps also get some grants, but also there was discussions with private-public partnerships that you're seeing a lot being accomplished, such as the Whitefield football field. It's happening, it can happen, and the possibilities are there. And finally, no plan was prepared. Again, Kroger's decision, from the time we knew, we moved on it. And the other thing is, the Evans Foundation is in the process as well of putting a master plan together for that remaining vacant property that they have control over. So there is planning going on there, but again, we're working on a very content time frame, so we did the best we can. I think we put a good conscious effort to try to do all the things we need to do it the right way for this TIF. And again, we are very respectful of the Newark City School Board's decision, and we expressed that to them. Dave Rhodes and I attended that Newark City School Board meeting the other night when they took the vote, and our hands are out. We want to continue to work with them. We'll find a way to get this done, and but I just want to make sure some of the facts were shared from the administration side as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Any other city officials? Our award-winning auditor, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Our Honorable Law Director Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will pass.
Thank you, Director Sassen. Mayor Hall.
I will pass also. Thank you.
Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to offer my congratulations to our new safety director. Got sworn in earlier today, so looking forward to having our sit down, and I'm looking forward to working with you on the issues that are facing our community. So welcome aboard officially now that he got sworn in, so thank you very much. It was nice to meet your family earlier. With regards to the TIF, it's very interesting because at one point I was on the other side as Mr. Blowers when I was on the school board, and now being on city council, I can say that I know Director Motter and Director Rhodes have worked very hard on the TIF. I haven't been in direct conversations that they and you may have had, but it's I think that the best interest in a partnership and collaboration was always there. And I think it will continue to be there. I think if we're going to move our community together, we can't get into the schools versus the city, and we have to do this thing together. And whatever results or actions happen in the future, it is my hope that things happen in a very unique partnership so that everyone benefits in a positive manner. And that leads to my next comments as to tomorrow is Election Day, and as divisive and as controversial things are, elections come and go, but I think we all have more things in common than we have different. And I think we're, as Americans, we're going to move forward with whatever leader is chosen. And I just look forward to it's not only just a presidential, and we have local candidates and we have local issues. And I just want to stress my strong support that everyone go, if you haven't already voted, to vote tomorrow for our street levy, which also includes funding being targeted for improvements within our safety departments. And so I just want to offer my support for that again, and with that I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Cost.
I would also like to express my support for the city levy, and I'd like to welcome Steve as our new safety director. We look forward to working with you. I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Cost. Mrs. Floyd.
I too would like to welcome Steve. We're glad you're here. I'm sure Mr. Rhodes is very happy you're here too, so he doesn't have two jobs. I too would like to express support for the levy. There's no doubt we need it for the streets and for the police and fire, for capital improvements. I think, like most people, I'm a civics government history teacher, and elections have always been important to me. And I think we can all say we will all be very glad when this election's over with. I don't know anybody who doesn't feel that way at this point. I did have, at our church on Sunday, we had a Vietnam veteran who is head of a Point Man Ministries come to be the speaker at church on Sunday. And for a little part of his speech, he quoted Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, with malice toward none, with charity for all, and I thought that's what hopefully happens in our nation. I'm not convinced it will, but I can certainly hope. And as Jeremy said, elections do come and go, and hopefully things move forward and we can work together as a nation. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Frazier.
welcome, Steve. I'm excited for the job. Look forward to having you in that role, and I know that your years of experience will go a long way in that position, and we look forward to having you on the team. As far as the TIF is concerned, I hope we will continue to try to pursue that TIF. I know that we do have some powers in which we can enact that, given what the current situation is. I guess the frustration on my part is with the current financial situation that we have, this is the best opportunity to build a connection road that connects those schools on the Evans complex. And to lose sight of that opportunity would be a disservice to the students of those schools and the safety of our community. An access point would encourage safety services, a secondary route outside of the school in case of emergencies, and continue the improvements in that area. And so I think it's very short-sighted for us to look at $56,000 of a net gain as a reason to not continue with a 20-year TIF in that area. But that is entirely up to the board in which they can make their decisions. However, I strongly disagree with that decision. With that being said, with the election coming up, everybody, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. But with it, the biggest thing is how we conduct ourselves. And when it comes to other sides of the aisle, people with different opinions, you need to hold yourself accountable for what you say and how that affects others. And in this divisive nature that we find ourselves in, it's critical that you show love and admire and appreciate those around you. And we definitely don't have all the time in the world. And so it makes no sense for us to limit ourselves and hate and malice and deceit. And so with that, go out and vote and participate and enjoy the longest democracy in the world with the most opportunity in the world as well. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Ms. Hall.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to welcome Steve as well with Matt. I'm sure there's going to be challenges, but I'm happy you're safety director. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to call a Ways and Means Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Welcome, Steve, and what you all said, I mean, there's not much more we can say, and I appreciate it, and go out and vote, and let's not think about being divisive, let's think about coming together.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Marmon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Need to call a Finance Committee meeting. Also, Brian Moorhead, if I got one more question for you before you leave.
Hey, Brian, Mr. Marmon has a question for you before you leave.
Yeah, if I could just catch you real quick. I appreciate it. Thank you. Congratulations, Jeremy, on the award. Job well done. Also, congratulations, Director. Welcome aboard, and look forward to working with you. Congratulations to those Cubbies.
Thank you.
I can honestly say I cannot recall a better World Series ever, and I am a baseball fanatic, and that was a very exciting series, 7th game, and I mean it was just, I stayed up for the whole thing and I paid for it the next day, but it was just phenomenal, and I really did enjoy it. And both teams are just class acts, and to be honest, the leadership of those two managers definitely demonstrated why those two teams were there. And then finally, I just want to make just a couple of comments. I agree with most of the comments as far as the TIF. Mr. Flowers, I look forward to your report on that you have. You said that you know there's a better way, and I look forward to receiving that report. You can just email it to me. Okay, as far as a better way to fund something that we've been trying to fund for over 15 years. And this is an urgent situation, and we have been talking about this, I mean, ever since Destiny 2020, which was even before 15 years ago. We knew that we wanted to connect that side up towards the north end in some way, shape, or form. And So I really look forward to receiving that from you. And I do look forward to trying to do something to make sure, and I respect the school board's opinion on it, but yet we still need to move forward and make sure that we're doing what's best for the citizens of Newark and making sure that the safety is, if all the things that we do have planned in the future come to fruition and we end up the makeup of our safety forces where they are going to be and already the traffic patterns that we have, it would definitely help us as far as different run times and just responding to different things. I don't need a study to tell me that. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Mr. Rapp.
Thank you. I'll call the Service Committee meeting for our next set of committee meetings. Safety Director Baum, welcome to the group organization. Glad to see you here. Look forward to working with you. Congratulations. Jeremy, I'd love to give you a rebuttal to your statements, but I think I'll reserve that rebuttal till tomorrow. I am a traditionalist.
To me?
No. Daniel, I'm sorry.
I say nice things.
So far tonight, you've been very nice, yes. I met Daniel so far. Daniel, I'll reserve that rebuttal till tomorrow. I'm a traditionalist. I am always the type of person, it's just your basic responsibility to go out and vote. So I absolutely plan on voting tomorrow. That's why when I leave here, I'll go get in line to make sure I can get to work on time at 8 o'clock. So I encourage everybody else to vote. I'm also concerned about the outcome of the election, regardless of who wins, but the actions of some of the citizens of our country, some of the non-citizens of our country, and I hope that our country is not judged and perceived to be as it is based on the actions of a few. So with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Mr. Levin.
Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Baum and Mr. Blake as well. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Congratulations, Mr. Blake. Nice award. Very nice. I'll take it in July.
You just pick it up, so I'm not going to touch it.
Director, congratulations. I hope in about 3 months from now, after negotiations and the budget, etc., that you're still happy you did this. But I'm sure you'll do a great job. So congratulations. And with that, our next committee meeting will be the 14th at 5:30 here in this room. Our next full council meeting is the 21st, which is 2 weeks from tonight at 7. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Ralph. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your attendance.